was kind of fascinating. I mean, my gosh, do many actors kind of go out of their way to learn musical instruments? I know Donald Carrier learned to play the bagpipes for one production a couple of years ago.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of actors will do that.
Yeah.
They really enjoy that, I think, for the most part.
Yeah.
It's part of the character, and obviously it's a very important part, certainly to Gordon, and often that's a key to the proceedings.
Have you heard him play yet?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, he's very good, and he has improved considerably, hasn't he, since we started rehearsals?
It's just wonderful.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, a question has already come in, and maybe we'll deal with that first. As someone has asked, what are the advantages of the Tom Patterson Theatre for Chekhov? I mean, I guess it's the same advantages as for any play, but perhaps particularly for Chekhov, maybe. Martha, do you want to, any thoughts about that?
Well, the Tom Patterson is I guess, my favorite stage. I feel terrible saying that because, of course, most of us started on the festival stage, and that is arguably one of the greatest stages in the world. But the Patterson has an intimacy that is unlike any other theater I've ever worked in my life. It's basically 3/4, not in the round, but you might as well be in the round because there's always someone behind you when you're acting on that stage. And if the production works well, the walls, the audience seem to become the walls in the house. It works very well for productions, doesn't it? Situated inside someone's home.
Yeah.
So I always enjoy doing I'll Be There.
Yeah.
And we did the Diana LeBlanc's production of Long Day's Journey into Night there, in which literally the audience breathed as if they were the walls of the house. So I'm kind of hoping they'll do that here.
Do you like playing on that stage?
I do. I really love it immensely. And it is it does feel like we're in a home on that deck, on that set that John Penway has put together. And I remember I did a production of Uncle Vanya there many years ago, and I think Chekhov works really well in that space. At one point between Chekhov's Act 1 and 2, there was a thing where the apprentices, the young actor had to come out and remove dust covers off the furniture, and he went out to do that, and there was a woman from the audience on the stage who had one of the dust covers and was taking it off the stage, and he grabbed it and he said, "I need that," and there was a little tug of war happening, and all of a sudden she said, in a Russian accent, she said, "Don't worry, I'm cold, I give it back." I think she truly believed she was sitting in a house in Russia somewhere, and that it had got a bit chilly, and she was just going to grab one of those blankets and throw it on while she watched the rest of the show. But there's a great story, and I was thinking about this the other day about when this production was first done by the Moscow Art Theatre, people, you've mentioned this, how people would it was hugely popular, and people would go and instead of saying, "I'm going to see a production of Three Sisters this afternoon," what they would do is say, "I'm going to spend the afternoon with the Prozorovs," which is the family name of the sisters and the brother, and I just think that's a gorgeous idea that people would come again and again to come and spend the afternoon with this family and be in the room with them. And I have a feeling we're touching very close into something like that. Very close.
We had our first run through yesterday with lights and sound. No costumes yet. We get those Friday. But I thought of that yesterday while we were watching the run. I haven't said that. I thought, my God, it's like spending 3 hours with this family that you get to know so well.
It's really thrilling to do, I have to admit.
Now, somebody once said that Chekhov's plays are objectively comedic, but subjectively painful. And I see that someone at home has sent in a question saying that Russians consider Chekhov to be comedy, and asking about the comic dimension in this production. Now, I personally have always found Chekhov quite funny. But maybe both of you could address that in terms of, to what degree is this play a comedy?
Well, it's funny the way we're funny, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, human beings are basically hysterical, funny creatures. He didn't call Three Sisters a comedy. He called The Seagull a comedy, and I guess he calls Vanya a comedy. He doesn't, in fact, call Three Sisters a comedy, but it's full of funny moments which are funny because they find themselves in these situations in which they think nobody knows what's going on, and clearly everybody knows what's going on, or they behave in ways in which we all behave, don't they?
There's sometimes an eccentricity to it, which can be, I think, funny, I suppose, except kind of glorious, though, too. I mean, and I think, you know, and so very Russian, I suppose. I mean, it just feels so rich and full of life, and as Martha says, I think. And then if you put 20 people around a dining room table that are so rich and full of life and intensity and in love and out of love and angry and happy and drunk and, well, some pretty amazing things are going to come out of that, you know?
Yeah. It's very much a kind of comedy of character, isn't it? And this version, which is by Susan Coyne, no, a little bit of personal disclosure. Many years ago, when I was at Queen's University, I was in a student production of The Cherry Orchard with Susan Coyne and Wendy Crewson, who's you know, big film star now. Susan, of course, has been an actress here at the festival for a few seasons. She's one of the founders of Salt Pepper, and she's one of the co-creators of Slings and Arrows. So she has a sense of humor, and I got to say that in reading this script, you know, I find myself chuckling. It's the eccentricity, as you say, that is quite delightful, isn't it?
It is, it's delightful, yeah, absolutely.
But it's not distinctively Russian humor, right? It's going to work for everyone.
It's very Canadian in a way, you know. I guess it wouldn't have occurred to me that Canadians and Russians were so much alike.
It's the snow.
But it's the snow, it's the climate.
They talk about the weather all the time. Like
Lucy has a line. Yeah, Lucy has a line in Act 4. We have to live in this climate, and it always seems to me that because the latitudes or longitudes or whatever they are so similar, doing this play in Russia or in Perm, supposedly is approximately where we are, is akin to being in Fort McMurray, Alberta. And so we understand that in our bones, and we know what it's like to come in out of the cold and spend months and months and months in harsh winter climates, and what that does to your brain and to your lust and to your indeed eccentricity.
Indeed. Now, in many ways, I suppose Chekhov kind of blew apart the whole. I mean, this play was first premiered in what, 1901. He sort of blew apart the whole kind of 19th century approach, the well-made play, in favor of something that was much more kind of psychological realism, I guess, is one aspect of his plays. And someone has asked about that. There's a psychological truth to these plays, but they're not what you might call kitchen sink drama, are they? I mean, this is not. The person here is asking about kitchen sink realism, and is that the approach we're taking? But I think there are other dimensions to Chekhovian drama too. I think besides psychological realism. Either of you care to comment?
Well, what I think he was objecting to was the fact that the theater was so artful and in many ways pretentious. And arch, yes. And he wanted, didn't he, to portray real people, real families in real situations. Now we take that for granted because he began that point of view in a theater. But at that point it was outrageous, and people didn't come to the theater to see real people until we got to Three Sisters, and as Lucy says, they all said they were going off to spend the afternoon or evening with the Prozovs. But before that, it was all high style and declamation and the grand gesture and the beautiful costume and things that bore no relationship to real life. That's what people went to the theater to see. And he turned that completely on its head to the point where initially they had a very difficult time doing these plays because they weren't used to it, they didn't know how to do them, and audiences had a very difficult time accepting them, didn't they?
Didn't know what to make of it.
Well,